Hi, fellow travelers. My name is Martin Desmond. When most people think of Yellowstone wildlife and tourists, they think of tourists as the ones harassing the wildlife. But the irony is that the wildlife themselves also have a good time of pissing off the tourists. And the biggest offender are the bison. On my very first day visiting the park, I was driving from Madison up to Norris, and I came across this 15 or so bison that were just very calmly walking down the road. Now, Gibbon Falls Canyon, where this is located, it's just very steep and narrow. And so, what the bison were doing is they were just simply taking the easiest route down the hill. And so, luckily for me, there was only a couple of cars ahead of me. But as I drove past the bison, I pulled out my camera after I realized the enormous bison jam that they had caused. And this actually stretched for over 1 mile. I mean, it was just an incredible bison jam. And this is in early May. So, got to be prepared. So, one of the things that the Park Service tells folks is to stay 100 yards away from grizzly bears and black bears and cougars. Not that you'd see cougars, though. And so, here's a black bear that was along the road from Mammoth out to Roosevelt. And this black bear was just looking around for food. Surprisingly, he seemed to be grazing on the grass, which surprised me. And one of the things is that the Park Service has been managing Yellowstone for over 110 years. And during this period of time, assuming a typical wildlife lives to be 7 to 10 years, there's literally been like 10 generations of wildlife that have grown up. And they've become really quite accustomed to human beings. And, they really sort of know what their place is. And so they really spend their time, mostly just ignoring people as much as possible. As you can see in this photo, I mean, if the black bear wanted to sort of chase down a couple of these tourists, he could have a pretty easy meal, but he just simply knows that he's not really allowed to eat people. Now, luckily for us, there weren't any park rangers around here. Actually, a park ranger did show up a couple of minutes after this photo was taken and told people to skedaddle because otherwise she would have gotten really upset with us. And the poor rangers, I mean, they really spent a lot of the summer just simply yelling at tourists. Here we have a grizzly bear that was about 80 to 100 yards up the hill here. And actually, you notice, despite what a lot of people may think, is the tourists are just being really careful and they're being pretty respectful and they're all really just hanging out by the road. And you notice some of them had some pretty high-powered cameras. Here we have desert bighorn sheep. And what was interesting about this is these sheep were only located about 100 yards down from the big grizzly bear jam, and they were just quietly grazing right along the road. And there was only 3 or 4 cars that had stopped to take a picture of them. So I don't know if they were sort of a bit annoyed with us not paying any attention to them, or if they were just simply content just to graze on the grass. And so finally, one day I took a drive out to Cody, and on the way, still in the park, I ran into these bighorn sheep. Now, I don't know how long they had been standing there, but they had completely, because they were just simply standing right there in the middle of the road, the tourists really weren't sure of what to do. And so, luckily, once again for me, I was only like the third or fourth car, but on the other side that you can see, the cars were backed up much more. Now, normally bighorn sheep, like to stay on fairly steep cliffs and everything to avoid predators such as the grizzly bears and the cougars. But these these bighorn sheep, for whatever reason, were just sort of having a confab right there in the middle of the road. And as you can see, I mean, they're just simply not paying any attention whatsoever to these tourists. Now, eventually, what started to happen is, particularly the tourists on the road that were looking down, they started beeping their horns and everything. And as you can see, one of the cars finally decides, he's tired of waiting, and so he's just simply going to drive ahead. And of course, the bighorn sheep really aren't quite sure what to make of it at first, and then you'll notice some of the other cars also start to drive up, and so they're still sort of maintaining their distance in the road, but now they see that they're being challenged by these cars, and so they're sort of a little bit confused of what to do. And one of them, two of them decide to butt each other just for the heck of it, though. Now, eventually, what does happen is the sheep do decide to move off the road. In this particular case, we didn't have any park rangers here. There really aren't that many park rangers in the park, though. So most of the time, the tourists just sort of have to figure out how how to get around the wildlife. And as I said, the tourists are surprisingly pretty patient with the wildlife, and the wildlife just pretty much take the attitude that it's their park and they'll hang out where they want to, though. So, anyways, it's sort of how they enjoy. And so here's a final picture of them walking up the hill off the road. And so thanks for watching the video, and we'll have more videos coming up of Yellowstone.